Start again.
Absolutely.
Good Friday morning, friends, and welcome to another episode of the Finding God in the Dark podcast. My name is Don,
And my name is Jonathan.
and this week, these next 3 weeks, we're going to pull the curtain back a little bit and let you know that we are recording 3 episodes at once today.
Yeah.
So you'll notice that our clothes don't change, the backgrounds don't change, our hairstyles. Well, our hairstyles. Anyway,
Yes.
so
It'd
we're
be really hard to tell our hairstyles can change.
So we're going to start out by talking about the last 4 episodes of season 5 of The Chosen, which is, yeah,
Episode 5, 6, 7, and 8.
five through 8. Yeah. And I want to, I just want to say again, I know I said this last week, but every time I try to watch this show, somebody in the house starts cutting onions.
Yes. Just, we're in a day and age, man, you can claim the fact that you cry. It's okay.
Okay, yeah, if you say so. I'm not crying, you're crying.
Yeah.
Um, wow, okay,
Yeah.
powerful.
Mhm.
This whole season
Yeah.
revolved around the Last Supper.
Yeah. It revolved
And
around the Holy Week, and then these 4 episodes I mean, they had interspliced scenes of the Last Supper throughout, but
yeah,
it was really Holy Week the first 4 weeks primarily, and then these last episodes have really been focused on the dinner. Yeah.
really, and a lot of very interpersonal
Hmm.
interactions
Yeah.
between Jesus and in particular disciples, Thomas and
Yeah.
I think Thaddeus. He had one, and the where do we start on this? Because it was pretty intense.
Yeah. No. Um, I think for me, I like the fact that they intersperse throughout this really series, but especially this last season, the idea that um, suffering, the idea that struggling with something, the idea with being angry about something, none of that's sinful, and you can be a committed Christian follower of Jesus Christ and struggle with stuff and don't understand stuff. They do that, those first two specifically with Jesus, but like I thought about one of the great kind of throwaway lines, but it was really more than that in episode 5, was when they're all trying to figure out who's going to betray him, and people turn to Thomas because Thomas has been angry about Rama's death and the fact that Jesus didn't stop it or didn't heal her.
Yeah,
And at one point, Jesus just looks at Thomas and he goes, "Despite your anger, you have been faithful." And again, I love that because as pastors, I'm sure Don can speak to this too. I feel like I've dealt with a lot of people in my time in ministry that feel like I'm angry, therefore I'm not a good Christian, or I'm really struggling with why God allowed this, or I'm really struggling with this really difficult situation in my life and I'm angry about it, and that somehow I'm not faithful, somehow I'm not a good follower of Jesus. And it's like, no, it doesn't work that way.
yeah, and I think we can even take that a step closer to ourselves. I mean, we get angry. People sometimes forget
Yeah,
that.
we're
Uh,
human beings.
Well, we are, and not just that, but like I'm a second career pastor.
Yeah.
So, I lived a whole life, a whole career basically before I went into the ministry
Yeah.
in a secular world where, stuff happened and you got angry and that carries over. I mean, it doesn't just go away, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, that was a really that was a touching moment there, when he says you what's he say? You've been faithful despite your anger.
Yeah.
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 Okay.
Yeah. No,
Um,
that was a I really like that moment because again, I feel like I've seen so many people like you probably have this experience too. People won't come up for communion, and you'll be like, "Why didn't you come up for communion?" And they'll be like, "Well, I'm worried about being worthy for it." And I'm like, "Okay, we need to do some education. That's not what it's there for."
okay. We just did this whole liturgy leading up to the actual exchanging of the elements
Yeah,
where you confessed your sins.
yeah,
Did you do that?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well,
Um,
yeah. Then get,
yeah,
and even more so as Methodists,
yeah,
we
yeah,
consider communion as a means of grace,
yes,
which means far be it for me to stand between some. Look, if
yeah,
I know you've got unrepentant sin, I'm still going to serve you communion.
yeah.
You know?
Because Wesley believed it could be a moment of salvation. Like he,
Absolutely.
um, yeah. I mean, I just love the fact that they're not they're even allowing Jesus to struggle and have doubts and really wrestle.
Yeah.
And one, I think that's true, and I really believe that happened. But at the same time, I think it's really powerful for followers of Jesus to recognize you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to have this all figured out. You don't have to always be always be at peace with God. Like that's not a requirement either.
Right.
Um, another thing in this episode, I feel like they did a good job of. I don't know. I don't think a lot of Christians know that the Greek word that is usually translated faith can also be translated trust. And some scholars argue that's actually a better way to to translate it. And also, there's a debate about that passages, especially in Paul, that say that we are saved by faith in Jesus might be better translated. We are saved by the faithfulness of Jesus. And
Oh,
so
okay.
this idea of that we are rooted in his faithfulness, we're rooted in his trust of God, and that we're called to trust in his faithfulness and trust in him. I think that's a helpful way for people to think about the faith journey. Is it's not it doesn't boil down to that you believe these things about Jesus. It's about that you trust that relationship and you trust in what Jesus has done for you.
Yeah. It's interesting because since we're kind of on that,
Yeah.
um, I don't know if we've mentioned this in all the discussion that we have had about this series, but uh, Jonathan Rumi is incredible.
Yes, no, he's amazing. I think I've said that a couple times, but to me, he will be. It's one of those things where it's like I was thinking about Superman because we're about to do that for a future week, and like I think probably for you and definitely for me, like Superman will always be Christopher Reeves. Like that's
Yeah,
just kind of. And
true.
I think after seeing this series, Jesus, when I think of Jesus in terms of an actor at least or an image, I'll probably think of Jonathan Rumi.
Probably, yeah. And I think it's not just his appearance, obviously. I mean, his appearance great, but just his I don't know. His humanity. I think it's very easy to identify with him, and particularly, I think for us, particularly as pastors, to kind of see that, like I've got to have my personal time, and yet, I'm dealing with your stuff, and my job is to kind of be. But he is so very pastoral.
He brings a depth of humanity to Jesus
Yeah.
without making it feel ham-handed. I feel like, and I feel like some of this is a lot of movies or kind of art around Jesus wants to solidify the idea that he's God, and they kind of focus on that element.
Yeah.
And I understand that. We believe that. But I do think sometimes we malnourish the idea that he's fully human. And I feel like if anything I can give a gold star to above anything else about this series is they've done an excellent job, I think, of showing him as a human being.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Um, so let's jump to where else do we want to go here?
I did
Uh,
on episode 5. I didn't want to
Five.
pick I did want to pick a Nick though.
Picking it.
Uh, yeah.
Okay.
And this, to be fair, the Gospels downplay the role of the Romans. So so downplaying the role of the Romans is not something that's new to the chosen. Like, but I think it's important to remember that when they have a discussion in episode 5 about picking the next high priest, that was going to be done by Rome. I'm sure the Sanhedrin could have put pressure or asked for it, or there'd been some mechanism to cause enough trouble that they do it. But they're not picking the high priest. Rome will. They, Rome might ask for like give us 2 or 3 suggestions, but Rome's going to pick the high priest.
Rome is picking someone who's loyal to Rome.
Yes. Yeah.
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 Yeah. So episode 6. Wow. So 6 is when they really jump into the communion part
Yes.
of the Last Supper,
Yes.
which look, we both knew that was going to be intense for us,
Yeah. Mhm.
and it was.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things I loved is one of the things I like to teach the people that I serve as their pastor is that in Christian tradition, it is believed that when you come to the table and when the elements are consecrated, Jesus isn't only there, but you're connected through the Spirit with everybody that's alive that's coming to the table and all the way around the world. But you're
Hmm.
also connected to the saints who have gone before. And so I loved,
Connectionalism.
yeah, I know.
That sounds familiar. Right?
That sounds Methodist. I understand. Sorry, that was a Methodist joke. Um,
It was. Sorry
but
for those that didn't get it.
they did this so I felt like they did it really powerfully because Jesus looks up and he sees John the Baptist, and
Hmm.
John the Baptist is eating, is partaking in communion. And
Yeah.
again, that speaks it. That is a traditional theological belief of the Christian churches that we are somehow feasting also with the saints who have gone before. And
Yeah.
I just love the fact that he looked up, saw John the Baptist, and he has this moment of like of peace, and because that's the idea, right? When
Yeah.
we recognize that this meal connects us deeply with people in ways we can't even imagine, and they illustrated that lovely with him looking up and seeing John the Baptist, and
Yeah.
he was at the table, he was eating with everybody else.
Yeah. And I mean, I think I think it also points up the importance of John sort of heralding the way for Christ,
Yeah.
that even though he's been executed, that he's still a part of that story, even at the end.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, where am I at here? Anything else is 6 before we go to 7?
I also, again, this is extra biblical. We don't have any stuff but I also liked the idea that there might have been people trying to turn people's opinions against Jesus. That, that because you have the moments in the gospels just kind of tell the story and they kind of jump around to what they want to highlight.
Hmm.
But it does almost seem shocking when you go like, well, they were cheering Jesus at the beginning of the week. How at the end of the week do they want to crucify him? And I do think it's nice to think about there were probably people trying to undermine what Jesus was doing. There were
Yeah.
probably people trying to turn the tide against Jesus, for the lack of a better term.
And I think that also points up one of those things that maybe we've preached or talked about at some point. I'm sure you've heard it said, well, the same people that were waving palm branches
Yeah,
and singing hosannas on Sunday were the ones calling for crucifixion on Friday.
yeah,
Well, we don't know that for certain.
yeah, yeah,
It could have been some of the same people,
yeah.
and then again, it could have been a completely different group of people.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think people recognize there's some estimates that Jerusalem during Passover ballooned to like 10 times the size normally. So
Right.
you think about the chaos of that city, and so there could have been there were hundreds of thousands, there could maybe even be close to 1 million people. That would be chaotic for any city,
Right.
but for an ancient city that maybe existed with tens of thousands of people on a regular basis, to balloon that far that quickly would have been just chaotic.
Yeah. 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 So that's an interesting,
Hmm.
an interesting footnote.
Yeah,
So episode 7,
yeah,
we get to the foot washing.
yeah. Which I liked. I At first I didn't understand what they were doing with Peter, and then I was like, oh no, that makes sense. They're doing this thing where, that he's trying to get all the elements he needs to wash Jesus's feet.
Hmm.
Um, I wish they would have done more. They kind of allude to it, but I wish they would have done more with the fact that it was normal for people and expected for when you walked in the door, you'd wash your feet. And
Right.
so they're all avoiding washing their feet because they do not want to be asked to wash somebody else's.
Yeah, they didn't really touch on that, did they?
Because
Mhm.
that would have been a status thing. So
Right.
to wash someone else's feet would have been saying you're a higher up disciple than I am. And so they kind of alluded to it really briefly, because like at one point Peter goes, "Okay, we're sorry. We should have washed our feet. We should have already done this." But I wish they would have unpacked that more.
Sorry.
That would have been a critique I would have given, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, Sorry.
No, you okay?
Usually I unplug the phone when I'm at
Yeah.
the other church. So,
Yeah.
uh, anyway, so we're at
Foot washing, yeah.
foot washing,
Anything
and
to say about the foot washing element?
well, I mean, I think they portray Peter kind of the way we expect Peter, right? The very much that iconic, run ahead, and like jump,
Yeah.
verbally kind of jump ahead of Christ, and then Jesus says, "No, come on, bring it back in, bring it back in," you know.
I think it was interesting they had the Jesus character call him Simon several times.
Yeah, yeah, like let's go back to the beginning there, son.
Kind of like, you're screwing up. I'm going to take the new name away from you for a second.
Right, right.
Yep. I like the fact that they didn't unpack the fact that the people sitting on the right and left side of the host were given special place
Hmm.
by the host and special recognition. And so that's a powerful thing you can lose sight of if you don't know that about Judas. So Jesus is giving him a seat of honor. You know,
But is he giving him the seat of honor because he knows what Judas is going to do?
I think he's giving, again, he mentions it briefly in this episode. I think he gave him the seat of honor because he is giving a living illustration of what it means to love your enemy,
Fair.
to love somebody
Fair.
that's persecuting you, love somebody that's hurting you.
Yeah.
He literally lived that out, right?
Yeah.
Because he mentions that in the episode, even tonight, you're supposed to love your enemies, or you make some kind of comment about that.
Yeah. Yeah. Even
Um,
tonight. Yeah.
yeah. Um, I wanted to talk to you in episode 7. What did you think about the flashbacks? We see, I don't know if we see every disciple, but we see quite a few disciples um, when they first met Jesus, or we get to
Um,
kind of get to see where they were and where Jesus takes them.
the black and white scenes.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. So these flashbacks in black and white, and I think this is how it's a flashback,
Yeah.
right? They didn't do like boom, dream sequence or something. But it's literally something that was happening in the present triggered a memory for each of the disciples.
Yeah.
I thought that was really interesting. I love the Matthew one,
Yeah.
right? Where Matthew sees the new tax collector,
getting
and the
spit
new
on.
tax
Yeah.
collector being spit on, and then it kind of flashes back to his first day as the tax collector, and
Yeah.
the establishment of his relationship with that Roman centurion, and that sort of thing. I think that was a really interesting way. And again, we're doing this, long-term storytelling, right?
Yeah.
We're coming all the way back from the beginning and bringing it forward again,
Yeah.
which this series has done really well, I think. Yeah, I thought that was interesting. I was wondering if they were going to try and do it with all 12, which they didn't.
Yeah, I think that would have been too chaotic or too long of an episode.
Probably.
Um, I did like the fact that and this transitions into episode 8, which is kind of the meat of the season. Is kind of the episode 8 is kind of the ultimate episode, right?
Oh
Everything
yeah.
leads into that,
Yeah.
and I love the fact that they chose to have this powerful speech Jesus gives about being his disciple, and he gave that to Thaddeus. They didn't have him give it to James or John or Peter. Like he gave that to Thaddeus. Like this is why. So this disciple that kind of falls off the
Yeah.
planet, that we
Yeah.
don't hear about in Acts. It's kind of when you're memorizing if you've ever memorized the disciples, he's one of those people who you're like, who, like like. And but
Uh,
that speech was amazing. I love that monologue. It was just you know talking about things that matter, and let's do something that really lasts and matters, and this community, this kingdom we're building is going to last and matter. And then I
yeah.
love how he ends it to him where he goes, Thaddeus, say yes to the world's no. you know
Yeah.
um I just, that powerful idea of that's a beautiful way to talk about kind of what disciples of Christ are supposed to be. We're supposed to give the opposite retort of what the world often wants.
Countercultural.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. And that was again another powerful moment in what has been a really kind of a powerful, intense season.
yeah.
Um, he he had another. Were there two parts here where he had flashbacks? Like Jesus himself had flashbacks, or
Well, in the gospel it says that Jesus went away to pray 3 times, and so in that they have some fun, and they imagine Jesus having 3 different essentially visions. The first
right.
one is pretty low hanging fruit. Isaac and Abraham. Abraham preparing to sacrifice Isaac. I mean,
Hmm.
that's low hanging fruit, but
Yeah,
it's still a powerful scene.
but it's there. Yeah.
And then I loved when he comes back. That's the second time he kind of comes back. Um, you see him see that you could tell he's getting upset with the disciples because they're falling asleep, or the three, Peter, James, and John are falling asleep, and he sees them as children. And I thought that was just a lovely idea, because I really,
Yeah.
I tend to say to people, I think God's so good at forgiveness because God knows everybody's backstory, and that kind of leaned into that idea, right? That
Yeah.
he sees them as children, and so he releases his frustration with them because he's like, they're kids,
Yeah.
they're new at
Well,
this.
and as dads, right, we identify with that. How many times have you done this, son?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Oh.
Um, so the second vision he has is of Ezekiel and the valley of the dry bones, which
Hmm.
that one I thought was an interesting choice because you could have gone anywhere, and that was a really interesting choice. Um,
But
and I love,
that was an interesting thing because he shares an embrace with Ezekiel, like like it's old home week. Just it's good to see you again.
well, and did you catch? I thought it was fascinating. They have Jesus say what in Ezekiel God says to Ezekiel.
No, I didn't catch it. What
So
was it?
so Jesus comes up to Ezekiel and they don't talk, and Jesus looks around at the dry bones and he goes, Son of Man, speaking again, we lose sight sometimes of Son of Man was just a way of referring to yourself, we've turned it into a title for Jesus, but it was actually just an ancient way of referring to yourself, almost saying like Jonathan Campbell or Don Stevens when you're
Hmm.
speaking about yourself, and but giving yourself kind of taking yourself and putting yourself in kind of a universal way. But anyway, Jesus comes up to Ezekiel, says nothing to him, and then I think he puts his shoulder on Ezekiel, and or his hand on Ezekiel's shoulder, and he says, "Son of man, can these bones um, can these bones come back to life?" Or something that the text exactly
Hmm.
how it says in Ezekiel, and then um, Ezekiel responds the same way he does in the text, where he says to God, "You would know." Basically, you're the only one who would know,
Right.
and they embrace, and it makes they're kind of seeming to make a kind of a statement that that interaction for Ezekiel was actually interacting with Jesus, and you could take that too far maybe, but I thought that was an interesting choice. You know,
Yeah.
that
Yeah. I thought that one was pretty poignant. And again, they've done this well. And then the third one was
Joseph, yeah,
Joseph, yeah.
yeah, which was I think a great place to end this idea of the power of the personal, the power of the fact that in need he would want to engage with his father. You know, that idea, especially I think for both of us, probably it was a nice moment because that's an adoptive father, and we're both adoptive fathers, and
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
but
Um,
I love the fact that you could have gone with another biblical character, you could have gone with another uh, story in the Old Testament, but they chose to end with he wants a hug from his dad. He wants.
yeah. And then it was really I thought this was an interesting take in that I think we all, if we read the scriptures, we all kind of understand or think that the disciples know that
Yeah,
when Judas leaves the supper, he's the betrayer.
yeah,
And yet, when the soldiers show up in the garden to arrest Jesus, Judas is behind them.
yeah,
And when he steps out, the other disciples are surprised.
yeah,
It's like, oh, it was Judas.
yes,
And I thought that was an interesting take on it.
yeah.
And then it was just, they held on to that moment for so long
So yeah,
of Judas just coming up and standing in front of Jesus and pause and pause and pause. And then, like, Jesus doesn't say anything.
yeah,
Judas doesn't say anything. And he
yeah,
just leans in and kisses him on the cheek. And, and it's like, oh my goodness,
yeah.
So
Well, I thought they did a really nice job with the Last Supper because Jesus in the Gospels, Jesus is laying down some heavy stuff, right? Like
yeah,
he's talking about his death, he's talking about betrayal, he's talking about kind of the pain that's coming, the persecution for them that's coming,
yeah,
and what I did enjoy was them pushing back and going like, can you explain this, can you unpack this for us? And I'm like, we don't get that in the Gospels, but of course I think it would be natural if someone that you love says, I'm about to be betrayed, you're going to be like, who is it, we're going to stop him, like.
exactly. That was I mean that was an earlier episode, right? But it was like there was so much of that where they were just back and forth. Well, who's it going to be? Well, it's probably Thomas because
Yeah.
just going back and forth with each other. It was really amazing.
And what I thought was interesting was they chose to not do that when he does communion, which in my head would have been a perfect time to have this unpacking of what he means in that, right? And talk about the real presence or the fact I'm giving you myself to you. But they obviously chose to just have what he says be the only thing that's said,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah. I don't. I mean, when we got to the end of it, we got to the end of this episode, so the end of this season, and I kind of went,
Yeah.
Because we know, yes, I know the story, but now I want to see how they end the story, you know?
Well, I'm very curious if season 6 will just be Friday or be Friday and the resurrection, or if the whole season will be just the resurrection and the
I
days after.
I'm gonna this is pure speculation, obviously, but I'm gonna bet that they throw a lot of flashback into
Yeah.
season 6.
Well, I would say this is just my opinion, but Good Friday is without a doubt powerful, but there aren't moments of levity. So it's gonna if they just do Friday without any flashbacks or any kind of breaks, it's gonna be a tough talk about cutting onions. It's gonna be a tough season to watch.
Yeah.
We may have to
Drink
do eight
drink
weeks.
lots of water ahead of time. You may be dehydrated.
We may have to do 8 weeks just so we do one episode a week.
We might. I don't know. We might.
Because I mean, again, if they don't find, and I'm sure they will, because I mean, they're very good at it, but it's also part of presenting something like this. There's gonna have to be moments where you throttle down the intensity, or you're just gonna be blown away with 8 episodes of intensity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, all right. I think overall, and
Yeah.
we've gone through all 5 available seasons now of The Chosen.
Yep.
I don't know. I don't think that I could recommend it more highly. I think it's great.
Oh,
It's
I
got little things we can nitpick for sure,
yes.
but in a lot of ways, it does such, and we've said this a number of times, it does a superlative job of filling in the blanks um, without denigrating the original text, right?
And I really think I think it would encourage people to read the Gospels, and I think that's a good thing. So
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, The Chosen.
yeah,
Um, yeah,
definitely
I
watch it
don't.
if you have Amazon Prime. Take
If
some
you
time.
have Prime, yeah, and you haven't watched it, start the beginning, sit
Yeah.
down, and get all the way through because it's worth the time. It's
Yeah.
absolutely worth the time. So, for
Uh,
next
Su-
week,
Superman.
week, our next episode, we will be talking about the film that is currently out in theaters, the DC James Gunn version of Superman, starring Ryan. What's his first name?
Brandon, right? No, no,
Brandon. I know
no.
his last name's Corn Sweat. I don't remember his first name now.
Yeah,
I'll have to look it up.
yeah. We'll look it up.
Anyway, until next week, friends, keep on finding the God in the dark. We will see you all next Friday. Take care and God bless. Bye.